Welcome back to the Moss Truck Outlaws West podcast. We are here, episode number 43. And you know what? Let's cut right to the chase. Phil, who's our guest tonight?
Man, you guys didn't think we were coming. We're here. Welcome back, guys. We're trying a little something different here this week where we're announcing our guests. And tonight's guest is a very special person. You know, we're all dorks in monster truck fandom, and we always talk about, one of the golden questions, like how do you get involved in the industry? Well, here, our guest tonight is somebody that took those advices and made it his career. And he's truly somebody that has worked up the ladder from crewing for the top teams in the business to becoming a monster truck driver. So we're going to hear about his entire story tonight. Our guest tonight is our friend, Rudy Martin Del Campo.
Rudy, it's awesome to have you. How are you doing tonight?
How's it going? Could you guys hear me finally?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me out.
Happy to have you, man. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And you know what? Let's begin with the first question. I'm gonna kick it off a little bit different tonight. How did your love for motorsports begin?
Really since as long as I can remember, because my family took me out to shows since before I was age 1, apparently. So kind of like how people who've grown up in the sport, that's all they know. So to me, all I know is monster trucks. I can't pinpoint when I didn't like monster trucks. So my family always went out to Anaheim. We're literally 10 minutes away from Anaheim Stadium. So we went there every year. And 2002, we went to our first World Finals, and we've gone every year before they eventually changed it to Orlando. But it's been a part of me my whole life, pretty much.
Your entire life being a monster truck fan. I have to ask Token questions. Who's some of your favorites growing up?
My favorites, without doubt, would be Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger, because when my family got me into it, I was when World Finals. I'm the same age as World Finals. I was born in '98, but World Finals 1 happened when I was 1 year old. So everything I know was towards Monster Jam growing up. But Gravedigger was my favorite, and the first DVD I ever had was World Finals 2. That was when Dennis brought out 3 trucks, and from there I've been a fan of mainly Dennis Anderson, and he's the guy that I look up to the most when I think of monster trucks.
So when did you decide that monster trucks is what you wanted to do in life?
Pretty much, I've always said I wanted to do monster trucks. I just kind of said it, and then as I got older, it's like, well, how am I going to do it? But I've known my whole life that I've always wanted to do it, because it was the only thing we ever did as a family was to go out to the shows, and that's pretty much the only thing we would go. We wouldn't go to any other place for vacation. It was just monster truck shows. That's all we did for fun. So it only made sense to do it as a career.
So how, at such an early age, I would imagine, how were you figuring out that you were going to get there? I mean, who's giving you advice? What's the path to get Rudy to where he needs to be?
Well, obviously, I think if you're in the sport, you're a fan, number one, and you kind of just go to your local shows and you ask if they need help. And I've asked a couple of times, and I've been denied at first. But the first time I really asked, I never actually asked. I was a senior in high school. I built a race car, and we pretty much won every competition. And I was heading into college, thinking that I'd get an engineering education first, and didn't really have a plan on how to really get my first foot in the door. But I messaged JR McNeal through Facebook, and I asked him some questions on how he did it and what he did. And he started his own business, and kind of similar to what I thought I would do. But I didn't ask him if he needed help. I just asked him what he did, and he was curious and wanted to know how old I was, and I told him I was 18. And he says, well, we're in Anaheim next time out. Why don't you come out and join us? And since then, I pretty much been a part of it. I got to see JR, meet Jack, Mike Langford, Josh Ross, and didn't really do anything, just kind of watched how they did the show. But after that, JR kept seeing me a little more, and he invited me out to test drive in May, and it kind of went really quick. But JR McNeal was the first person who got me into it, and really it just goes by asking first, you know.
So I heard you mention something about a race car. Can you tell us about what this race car is about?
Yes. So I've been a fan of Montreux my whole life, and the high school that I was a part of is Century High School in Santa Ana, and they started their own race car team the first year I was there. So when I showed up the first meeting, it was pretty legit. They wanted a race car to go 60 plus miles per hour, all that. Want to build it from the ground up. And a lot of kids showed up. It was like 10 kids, students. And they told us the whole plan. And they said, all right, who wants to be a driver? And no one raised their hand. So I raised my hand. They said, all right, let's get you measured and everything. And they made the car to my size. And we pretty much built a race car that was completely made out of carbon fiber. And it had 7 lithium-ion batteries. It was 3 wheels. It had a ZEV electric scooter wheel in the back. And the competition was to run it as far as you can on a full battery's worth of charge or a full tank of gas if you want to run gas. And it was called the UCI Energy Invitational. And the rules never said we couldn't use the sun as part of our power. So we installed solar panels on the race car too, so it can charge while it runs. And that's why we named it Unstoppable, because it can go on forever, you know. And we got 5th place our first year, but after that we entered it in the California State Fair, and we entered it in the industrial engineering competition, I think is what it was called, and we won 1st place. But what we didn't know was everyone who won a prize, everyone who won the 1st place prize in each division of whatever category they were in, they get all the 1st place winners and put them into one category on which one's the best out of all the winners. And we got the 2014 Best in Show, which is the best project in 2014 in all of California, I guess. And we got this like really big Golden Bear Award. And since then, we've been winning races and a lot of engineering design competitions with it, because we always upgraded it. And eventually, I was crew chief my first 3 years. And when I was a senior, I was finally able to drive it finally. And I was 1st place in the race. And then it rained, and I was tied. I was actually tied for 1st place points-wise. And it rained, and then we had to wait a week for them to number all the data. And they ended up deducting people for what they did, and my deductions were a little more than others. So I ended up 3rd or 4th that year. It was never clear to me, but I know it was, I think, 4th actually. But 2 years later, when I was already graduated, they needed a driver, and they called me up to drive, and I finally won the race. Beat everybody by 6 laps, and we did so well they had to ban the car from competition. So that's a quick version of a quick story of Unstoppable.
Unstoppable indeed. I'm sure you had a great mentor there helping you out along the way. Who was in your ear while you guys were building Unstoppable?
Yes. Thomas Newsbickle and Mark Bush, those are the 2 guys that started the race car team, and they were my first real teachers mechanical wise on how to use wrenches and all that. So I thank them first for getting my foot in the door with actually being finally involved in motorsports, because I grew up in apartments my whole life. I have 5 siblings, parents, and we couldn't afford to have like a motorcycle or nothing hands-on. So that was the first time I was actually able to be hands-on finally. And yeah, they're the ones that started my hands-on works, and I give them full credit for it.
What kind of advice did those guys give you early on too? I know there's got to be a lot of older peers. How advice-wise did they help you out as well?
Thomas Newsbickle was an architect for 30 years, so he knows all about designing and tool-wise. Like he's been through it all. He knows how to do everything. and Mark Bush was really good with electrical work, and he's really good with computers. So kind of both of them collabed and started this race car team, and they just, I don't know, how do I say this? I don't know. I just liked being around them. Like I just liked using power tools. As far as advice, they knew I had a passion for it, so they wanted me to kind of go through the engineering route, because this was actually funded because it was an engineering club. On paper it's an engineering club, so everything was advertised as engineering. So it was a race car team, but we had to make sure we always include the engineering aspect of it, and it was because we always built new race cars every year. We built a go-kart called Lefty Lucy. That was a gas go-kart. Then we converted it to a lay-down kart and called it Creeper, like those dollies you see that mechanics use. But as far as advice, they always pushed me to do monster trucks. They just wanted me to do it through an engineer way of doing it first, getting an education, doing all that. And yeah, they pushed me to get an education. I did 3 years of college. But over time, I was balancing monster trucks back and forth, and I'm kind of going all over the place. But eventually, I stopped doing the engineering courses. I wasn't doing too good. Not as much as I want. I got D's. I never failed a class, but I wasn't the best academic wise. And they were the first people I called when I said I'm kind of just going to stick with monster trucks because I'm kind of in the door. But at the same time, school is kind of in the way because all I think is monster trucks when I'm in school. So I let them know first what I wanted to do, and they were totally okay with it because they knew at the end of the day, no matter what meetings we had in front of people that were supposed to donate us money, they knew I would always throw in, I want to do monster trucks, which kind of hurt because you sound fancy when you're saying you did this with the race car, you went with this race car, and they're like, well, what college do you want to go to? And you're like, I don't know, but at the end of it, I want to be a monster truck driver. And then it kind of probably hurt maybe potential sponsors because they think that's a little, outrageous. They're expecting to say NASA or something. But no, but they pushed me as far as pursuing my dreams. They were the first people that were actually kept me into doing something that I like to do, rather than just going through the day and hanging out with friends and, I don't know, parties.
I love it. And we're going to keep going, building upon that ladder here. So make sure, there's a lot of people tuning in right now. So make sure you like this video and you share this video all across social media. Make sure everybody knows that Rudy is here. He's telling his story, very inspirational story. I know there's a lot of proud family members in the comments. So make sure you guys are sharing this video as we continue on here with Mr. Rudy. Now, Rudy, you mentioned J.R. McNeal. You got a hold of him. And what are those first steps of, trying to get your foot in the door with the Raising Cane Monster Truck team?
Well, like I said, I messaged him and I was expecting like an answer and I hope to see you down the road and whenever you're done with your deal. But no, he says, come on down when we get to Anaheim. And when the day came closer, he didn't message me, but I already planned to go. So I showed up there. And I had never been to the Anaheim pit party. My family doesn't do the pit party stuff, but I went for the first time, and I didn't know if I wanted to talk to JR or not because I felt like if he didn't message me, maybe he's too busy and things didn't work out. But then I was like, well, this pit party is kind of small. I went through all the trucks, kind of. So I'll just talk to JR and tell him, hey, I was the kid who you talked to, and thank you for the advice. And he was like, wait, you're the kid I'm talking to? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, here's my number and come back and we're going to do the show. And yeah, from there, I did the show with him. After the show, he had some rear steer issues. I helped change the block out. And then that was it. And I didn't think nothing of it. I didn't think I did anything that was worth, I was really that impressive. But then 2 months later was World Finals and my family always goes and we saw JR at the pit party. And I just wanted to introduce him to my brothers and my moms. And he says, if it's okay with you, I want to ask your mom if it's okay that I invite you out to Florida to test drive a truck. And we said yes. And fast forward, it's May, and I meet Kristen Hope for the first time and the whole team for the first time. And JR was having a test driving day or test shock day, I guess, with his trucks. And we all got a chance to drive. And Roy Pridgeon and Buddy Tompkins kind of split everybody in half because JR had a lot of his sponsors there too. And all of us were going to get 3 rounds each. First round, drive around, and the last 2 rounds, jump whatever you want. And I remember I was standing next to Roy a lot, and everyone kept nosediving the truck. And Roy was getting a little, not frustrated, but he was like, these guys got to make sure they power through it. They'll feel it. They'll feel it. And everyone just kept doing it, and I was last. So Roy kind of, once I got strapped in, I was supposed to go on Roy's truck. But last minute, I found out that I was better fit in Buddy's truck. But Roy looked at me, and there's a video clip out there of Roy talking to me and doing this. And he was like, when you hit the ramp, just power through it, look at the trees, but just get through it. You're not going to nosedive. And that's what I did. And I hit the ramps, and I did it right. But you ever seen the movie Ice Age where Sid has the watermelon and everybody's celebrating, and then he throws it on the ground really fast? That was how it was on the landing. It was perfect, like, yeah. And it, bam, just landed on the gas. So that was the one thing I could not get down, was my throttle timing. And in the video on Raising Cane's YouTube, you can hear Buddy telling me it's great, but the only thing is you're landing on the throttle. And my 3rd round out, I hit the small ramp twice, and I didn't know what it looked like on the outside, but it was getting dark really fast too. So I turned around and I hit the bigger ramp that was out there, and that was the ramp where everyone had really bad nosedives, and I just floored it, and I over-revved the motor, and I broke a block out. But I remember seeing everybody pumping their arms and cheering on the end of the track, and I was going to turn around, and I was going to hit the backside because I was so hyped. But then the rear steering started acting up, and it shut me off, which is probably a good thing because I probably would have launched it not knowing what I was doing at the time. But that was my first 2 months knowing them, and a lot of things happened right there. And JR told me and Kristen, like, we're hired practically. And once first quarter gets started, we're going to be on triple thread. And yeah, that's how I got started with JR. Really fun though, JR, if you're watching this. I can still remember how Raising Cane feels. It still feels like a marshmallow.
Man, who doesn't love marshmallows? See, it's such an incredible time. That's right when I think a lot of people now know, the Wolf's Head, and now it's a big Ford truck team. That was right when JR was expanding the team to have all these more extra trucks. And again, right place at the right time. And I think, I see a comment here just came in from Camden Skogans. He says, well spoken for and smart words. I think that's a very good testament, especially taking back someone like JR. I imagine he gets all sorts of people messaging him, and for some reason he picked you out of the crowd, and you get out there in your test driving to back up a bit. What's going through? I mean, that first time you're in the truck. I mean, I know you talked about in detail bouncing around, but you're a fan. All you ever want to do is drive a monster truck, and now you're putting the helmet on with the fire suit. I mean, what's going through your head in that first initial time you strapped into the truck?
What's funny is I'm not a guy that really gets nervous. But JR asked me and Kristen, are you guys nervous? And Kristen, I remember she was like a little, and then Rudy, are you nervous? Nope, not at all. No, I'm excited. I mean, I had nothing to lose, I knew it was just for fun. But no, like, I was excited. I had no nerves at all. So I think that was kind of a natural feeling. As far as what driving the monster truck, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how high it was until I looked back at the footage, because I thought it was lame the whole time. But no, it was fun. I just remember when I jumped in the air, I was nervous because I don't know. I've always grown up thinking it hurts a little bit, but it didn't hurt at all. Like, I still remember how Raising Cane feels, and I've only driven 2 trucks, and that truck is still the best one yet that I've driven. So I remember it vividly, and I just remember when I hit that big ramp at the end, I had the RPMs going so much. I saw blurry vision. Like, it was just very fuzzy for a split second. But other than that, it was just a lot of fun, and I just remember I wasn't nervous. I was stoked the whole time. That's why I'm glad it broke, because I would have turned around and probably launched it because I was in the moment. Not a good thing to say in monster trucks either.
Oh man.
No, but you kept your head attached. You didn't fall apart. But then you mentioned you jumped right into the triple threat series. So when did you test? What year was that?
That was 2017 May, and I met JR in February, 2 months prior to that, or 3 months prior to that.
Okay, so then now you're just right off the bat, then you're hired onto the team and you're starting to travel the roads. I mean, who are some of the people that are on the team at that time that are just going up and down the highways with you?
So, when I got started with Raising Cane, still didn't really work on monster trucks too much. I didn't really work in them at all. I kind of just showed up in December, a week prior towards the whole event. The whole triple threat started, and that's where I met Jack Brown for the first time, Nick and Kristen Miguez now, Trent Montgomery, and we all just met. And the person I related to the most was Kristen, because me and her were the exact same. We didn't, have any experience at all. So we kind of just jumped in it together with the same experience, which was no experience. But yeah, me and Kristen learned pretty much right away. We just showed up and there was already finished trucks right there, and we didn't know what to do until the whole triple threat started in January in Nashville. And we broke like 3 axles. We broke a drive shaft. Jack had rear steer issues. Yeah, we had a lot of issues that first weekend, but we got it through.
Yeah, so the triple, I mean, you're really thrown to the wolves talking about. We've had some triple threat athletes on here before, and we know the rigorous training that goes into those events, or just the athletes, but for
Right.
the technicians, there's just so much going on. And I know you guys run a lot on the East and the Centrals, and those are a lot of events packed into a weekend. You know, it's one after another, and you're working in there. And I know you're working with Kristen Hope, and then now her husband Nick Miguez. Didn't you guys have a nickname for your group whenever you guys were all together?
Yeah, we call ourselves Team 98 because we were all born in 1998. We were all the same age. We were actually the youngest team at the time. I don't know if it's the youngest team in history, but the 3 of us were the same age doing this together. And I remember everyone in the whole tour, you know, all the managers and all that, we had our drivers meeting. They called us the kids. That's how they referred to us. But it was super fun. I wish I enjoyed it a little more, because I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because my second day on the job, I actually broke my arm. So I did the whole triple threat with one arm. So that was a little tough, and it was kind of aggravating because I couldn't learn as much as I could have, or if something broke, I was very limited. So I was honestly, until probably the 8th or 9th week, was on a cast the whole time, and I couldn't lift heavy stuff. So that was a little frustrating, and I actually held me back compared to the other 2, Nick and Kristen, from learning these trucks. And I didn't even know how stuff weighed yet. So when Nick would break, when Trent Montgomery would break, or Jack, and we had to tear apart a corner, you know, I didn't know what it felt like to hold the hub off or hold an axle yet. But at the end, I mean, I still learned a lot watching them. And Trent Montgomery, that guy was really cool to work around, but it's a lot of tough love. Like, he gets in the moment where he needs, you know, stuff done right, or like he kind of just has that how do I say it? I don't know. It's just tough love, and he was really strict, really tough on us as far as getting things back on the track as quick as we can and done right. But Trent Montgomery really pushed us a lot, and so did Jack. But those 2 guys, I'm sure, were frustrated a little bit because we were all so new. But over time, you know, we learned, and we learned through a lot of rushing and tough love, honestly.
This picture might bring back some memories.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see I'm hiding my arm right there.
Do you remember where this was?
That was, I'm going to guess, Baltimore. I think that's Baltimore.
I don't have an answer for you, so I'm going to take your word.
That's the other interesting too, was I've been in Southern California my whole life. My whole life was like in a 30-mile radius. So J.R. McNeal bringing me in was the best thing that still has ever happened to me. And I remember just getting there to Florida, flying in, then traveling as we got closer from, you know, the shops in Florida. When we got to our first event in Nashville, I didn't ride in the front seat a lot that first trip, but once I got to the front, we were like an hour away from Nashville, and I started realizing there's a water, you know, I'm in the city, so you see like water balls and stuff on the ground. but in the city over there, the water bottles are frozen. So I wasn't used to seeing cold temperatures. But I saw pretty much the whole East Coast of the United States, and the roads were like you're going through all kinds of driving over bridges and rivers and seeing a lot of cool animals. So it was really like a culture shock just seeing what the rest of the world is like. Because I literally am like 10 minutes from the beach, and I can count in one hand how much time we actually go to the beach. So yeah, just kind of stuck in where I was for the first 18 years of my life. So for what JR did, I can't thank him enough, and he's the reason why I'm here, where I am, where I at. But I can't even talk. How do I say it? He's the reason where I am, and I wouldn't have been here a lot sooner without him.
Definitely sounds like a great life experience. We also have a comment here from Tom Nusbickle, and he says, Rudy, not just a driver, but a leader, and he doesn't even know it. Led our unstoppable team as a freshman and not only worked his tail off, but he taught a lot of his teammates basic mechanical skills, but made sure they understand the technical side of a very technical car.
And thank you, Mr. Newsbiggle. And that was the other cool thing was I was crew chief for the car. And when I learn something, I get so excited. I want to make sure someone else understands it. So that was pretty much what I did. And I have a YouTube channel called Unstoppable Racer that I made 8 months ago. And I figured no one's really done it yet. So I want to start teaching people about monster trucks too, because I was a fan myself too. And I know what it feels like when you want to be a part of it, but you didn't know how. And when some people are a part of it, but they're nervous and they're kind of not getting good gigs yet. So I just want to help people as much as I can, show them what the parts are. So I made this Clark video last week. And for people that want to get into the sport, the first thing you're going to learn is the corners. So that was the most important thing I wanted to cover first, because I can only make videos when I'm actually working on a truck. So every now and then stuff will pop up on the channel. But no, I want to make sure that was the first thing I put up, because people are trying to get into the sport. And the first thing they're going to learn is that. So kind of made sure I was very in depth with it. And when people get to help out their first team, when they see a Clark and if they are in front of it and seeing people taking it apart, they're going to think of that video, hopefully.
And, talking about that, that video and your story tonight is inspiring a lot of people. Is shout out to Camden Scoggins, wanting to build his own monster truck. But, with your channel, what can we expect in the future from your YouTube channel, and where can we find it?
The YouTube channel is called Unstoppable Racer. And from what you can expect is just whenever I get a gig, I'm going to cover it as much as I can and just share it with people, because the reason why I do it is one day I do want to own my own stuff. That's years from now. But I kind of want to show people, be one of the first to be able to show people what it's like to start from wrenching on them all the way to getting a seat. And then maybe as I want to start doing my own stuff, then you guys can just follow along. And I just want to share my journey, and maybe 5-10 years from now, I'll have my own stuff.
Baby steps. You're working up the ladder.
Yeah.
It's crazy to hear all those early stories. So again, if you guys are enjoying our episode right now, make sure you share this video across social media. Let everybody know Rudy's here telling his tale, and you're traveling up the roads, with JR McNeal, and that's the other side of the country for the most part, going to all these places. But then you start helping out another big name team. It's a lot closer to where you're based out of. How'd you get hooked up with the Swansons in Obsession Racing?
Well, when I was working with Raising Cane, 2018 was our first quarter season. But 6 months prior to that, in July 2017, I helped out the Swansons for a couple days, but I didn't really know what I was doing. They didn't really break much either. But that was the first time I actually met them, and I got their contact number. And when I was working with Raising Cane, whenever I wouldn't have a weekend with them, I would call Rick and see if he needed help, and kind of just went back and forth. So one weekend I'd be with Raising Cane, and if I had 2 weeks with no shows with them, or a month, I would spend every weekend with them. But over time, I was also doing college in the middle of all this triple threat year. So I had triple threat from Friday to Sunday, and then I had school from Monday to Wednesday. I had to schedule it that way so I can get all the classes jammed in 3 days done, so I can kind of do homework on the planes and in between shows. So it was really a lot at the time, and I'll admit that I wasn't the most academically good at grades, so it was really hard for me to balance it. And over time, I was not doing as good as I should in classes, no matter how much I tried. So the next best thing was I thought at the time I was really into my engineering career as much as monster trucks. So I had to tell JR that I had to kind of focus on school, and the only way it would work is if I did the stadium tour. But we kind of couldn't come up with something that would work for both of us. So I made sure that I helped out for 1 month in 2019, while I didn't have school, because school didn't start till February for the spring. But I told JR that after this, I think it's best that I kind of focus on school for a little bit. But I'm also going to be with the Swansons for the next few years, probably doing both, So when I told that to JR, he was okay with it and he understood it. And I made sure that even though I'm leaving, I said if there's anything he needs, I'm still there for him. And he said the same thing to me. And I made sure that whenever I'm at shows where he's at, we're still really cool, and we're happy to see each other. And we did have the same tour. So even though I left his team in February 2019, I went to the Swansons. JR and Rick and Eric were on the same tour, so I still saw JR the next week. But it was just super cool. Because before each event started, I would crawl in his truck and fist bump him and tell him good luck. So it was still really fun. And I haven't seen JR in 3 years, I think. No, since Nick and Kristen's wedding. But I look forward to seeing him again, because my knowledge has grown tremendously, because I've only got to work with him for just a little over a year. But anyways, that's when I started working with the Swansons for almost 2 years. And that was a lot of fun, because me and them, we were like family together. They would always invite me out to help out. And whenever Rick needed help, he would call me and I'd be there as soon as I can after classes, and vice versa. If I needed his help, he would help me out right away. And we were literally like a family. And I miss them, because they're in Idaho now. They used to be less than an hour away from me. But no, they were the guys that really helped me out as far as understanding these trucks, because they were so close to me. I saw them every week. I probably didn't go more than 2 weeks without seeing them. And every day was just working on monster trucks, and we weren't super busy after first quarter. So that's when I got to slowly understand and kind of take apart things and understand the science behind them. So as far as my first real teacher in this sport, where he made sure I understood all this, was Rick Swanson. I just can't thank him enough, and kind of just really appreciate the time I had with them. We spent Thanksgivings together, Christmas night dinners with them. It was fun.
Got a comment here from Lee Plato from Skull Crusher, and he says, if I owned a second truck, this guy would be the driver for us.
Awesome. See, and this is why, for me, it's important to, for me, it was important to actually work on the trucks first before I became a driver. Like, not to take anyone against that, get the seat right away. That's what you want to do. I'm happy for you. But for me, I grew up watching it on TV where Dustin Brown or Becky, Mark McDonald would even work on the trucks. And I just thought that you have to work on the trucks first to, want to even think about being a driver. So that's what I've been very strict on, was I didn't want a seat, and I didn't even want to ask for a seat until they were to personally ask me. So that's why when I go to a show, I still ask sometimes the most simple questions still to this day, because I want to, make sure I understand the different ways of how to understand the same thing. So I make sure that I just want to, when people see me, they don't see me as a driver only. They see me as someone that also worked for it too. So that, to me, that's the most important thing, is to be able to say I earned it, and people who have helped me out, I want to make them proud by doing stuff for my own too one day.
He's got another comment from your good buddy Levi Shones. And Levi says, here's a fun Rudy story. When he started working with the Swansons, it was the night Eric beat Gravedigger in racing. After the show, I see Rudy look up in the stands, and Tom, his teacher, was there. And while I'm waiting for trucks to move, Tom is going nuts for Obsessed and Rudy. It was cool to see. What was that moment like, Rudy?
Yeah, that to me is still probably one of the most coolest experiences I've ever had in my life, because Anaheim is the stadium I've always gone to my whole life. So first weekend out being with the Swansons officially, we won racing. And I remember the night before I asked Eric, like, what do you want to do this year? And he says he wants to win a racing trophy. And he won it. And to me, it was super cool because it was my hometown stadium, the one I've gone to like 40 shows probably in my lifetime there. So it was just kind of an unexplainable feeling of being a part of a team that won it and seeing my teachers behind me. The first time they'd ever been to a show and we won, the odds were pretty crazy.
All right, so you're working for Rick Swanson. He's our past guest. He's our friend. We can throw a bone at him. Tell me, what is your best Swanson story?
I'm sorry, what'd you say? You cut off last second.
That's all right. What's your best Rick Swanson story?
Oh, best Rick Swanson story. There's a lot, but I'm trying to think of what should I say? Well,
what should I say?
As far as Rick loves to, I don't know, something that makes me laugh about Rick is Rick loves to talk a lot. So sometimes when I would be, when I was in school, let's say I finished all my homework and all of a sudden I have the next day and a half off. So I would call Rick and I would ask him hey, I'm done with my homework. You guys need help for today? And he'll that's not a bad idea. And he's walking around. He has, rock gravel all over his yard. And I can hear him just walking. Yeah, I'm just doing the lawn and this and that. I got to get some weed sprayer for this. And he'll go on and on and on. And 45 minutes into the conversation, he gets lost in himself. And he's like, but anyways, no, I think give me a call in about 20 minutes and I'll have an official answer. And I'm like, if you would have just said yes or no, but if you would have said yes, I would have been there by now. But sometimes Rick would call me and he's like, what are you doing? I'm about to take one of my first exam. It starts in 5 minutes. I'm studying. Oh, okay, so listen, I got a funny story to tell you. And he's just super funny like that. He doesn't realize he's funny.
That's why we love him. He's Big Daddy Rick for a reason.
And let me mention, Buddha was also a part of the team too. He helped out pretty much as I did too.
Yeah, Buddha. Buddha got a shout out on a live stream today. I don't know if anybody caught that. Another monster truck. Yeah, out in Ohio or Pennsylvania, whatever. Hey, no, we're not interviewing Buddha. We're interviewing Rudy tonight. So if you guys again are enjoying this video, make sure you like this video as we continue on with Rudy. I see a lot of great comments in here. I saw some shout outs from Danny Madrigal and Big Joe Foley. A lot of cool people here. And also a great one. It's got to be a family member of yours. It says, Rudy has a good heart. One time he bought a bike for one of his college friends because he didn't have enough money. So Rudy got him a bike. Likes to help people. He gets that from his grandmother. Is that your grandma that commented that?
That's my mom. No, yeah, there was this cool kid. My friend, he was from Egypt and he was still learning his English, but I had an engineering class and we were signed up to build an engineering project together and we got to know each other. And I got to learn that he did come from Egypt and he's living by himself. He's here to get an education, but he has, I forget what it's called, but he's really sensitive to the sun. I forget what it's called. So he has to take a bus and you see him go to school and he'll show up with 2 coats of sweaters. And then when he gets in class, he'll take it off. And he kind of explained to me what he has. And he says, but he has to show up extra early for the bus and he can't leave until this time because the bus comes back. So he doesn't really have a good job, or I don't think he had a job at the time because he's so focused on school. So he dealt with what he had. And I said, well, and I didn't have a car. I still don't have a car. I'm doing monster trucks. You kind of give up your life for a little bit and you work for free. at first, basically, because you can't get paid right away. But anyways, he saw my bike and he's like, man, I want a bike one day, like, so that way I don't have to worry about the bus. And when I was still working with JR, and JR really took good care of us. So, you know, the pay was actually really nice. So I had enough money saved where I can kind of buy some stuff here and there. And I used some of that money to buy that kid a bike. And we kind of only saw each other for that first semester, and he did his own thing. But every now and then I would see him on that bike. So something pretty cool.
Also, I have a comment here from Kristen Hope Miguez, and she says, Rudy is the bomb. Some of my funniest memories were with him on the road.
Yeah, and I'm kind of jumping back and forth, but or speeding fast than I should have. But when I was with Raising Cane for the summer of 2018, I was there the whole summer. And Nick and Kristen let me stay at their place for free, you know, and I tried to get him takeout food as much as I can, but they insisted, you know, no, we got it. So I can't thank them enough for, you know, having me at their place, and it was the hospitality was really cool. And until this day, they're still one of my best friends, and we still catch up with each other all the time. And I still can't see them. I still can't wait to see them one day. Funny story is when they got married, I don't remember if it was 2019 or 2019. I wanted to go to their wedding, you know, because they meant a lot to me. And I had my plane flight there to be there an hour before the wedding. So I landed in Chicago, and I was going from Chicago to North Carolina, but we had bad weather in Chicago where they had to keep us there for an extra hour. So I got to their wedding late, and when I showed up, like, literally all I see is people hugging each other. Like, I just missed it by 20 seconds. Like, you know, that was kind of funny. So they were like, you just missed it. And I'm like, do it again.
Got a comment here from Mike Minner, who says, is Captain's Curse still your all-time favorite truck?
Captain's Curse? It was, Alex, how do I say this? Alex helped us out at the Raising Cane shop one time. So that was my first Monster Jam driver I met in person. But no, like, I like Captain's Curse. I remember it being my favorite truck. Probably mistaking it for someone else.
Aww.
So, speaking of Mike Minner, what do you think about the mini monster trucks?
I actually got to really get to know Mike Minner the past month when I was at the Wjs display. We were there for 2 weeks, and I got to really know them really well. And I found out he's having a monster truck. Craig Christensen is actually building him a monster chassis right now, and he's going to slowly start getting parts for it once he gets the chassis. But whenever Mike Minner needs the help, I'm going to be there as much as I can to help him out too. He's only a little less than an hour and a half away from me, so I'll be there as much as I can if I don't have any work going on anywhere else. But yeah, make sure to follow the Warhead team because they're going to start posting their new build pretty soon.
You know, talking about the WJS display, what was that like, and what were you doing down there at WJS?
So I'm a part of Sam Sturge's Motorsports as of today, but we don't have shows. So since November of 2020, I've been going to the Reimers and helping out at Sam's shop for a couple weeks. Then we went back to the Reimers. Then we had a display for WGAS. So we're kind of just bouncing all over the place, trying to make some sort of income. But that WGAS display was something that John Borba wanted to throw in to kind of get all of us some cash and something where that kind of keeps us busy. So I got to get to know John Borba really well. Got to actually drive unnamed for the first time, see what it was like to be inside of it. And pretty much just 2 weeks just hanging out with the whole crew over there for WGAS and drivers that I've never met before. I met Tony Canedo, and I helped him out a lot there, tiring up and tiring down, making sure his trucks were good. And I might even be helping Tony Canedo out too. If I don't have any work soon with Sam, I'll be kind of going back and forth with either Mike Minner, maybe Lee from Skull Crusher, or Tony Canedo, Sam. Like, you know, I'm just going to be bouncing back and forth until everything gets back to normal, and then I'll get more weekends with Sam Sturges.
So, while we're on the topic of WJS Motorsports, someone who's very close to them is the Reimers. Have you been doing anything with the Reimers recently?
Yeah, in December 2020, Jacob Ladwig calls me, and he knows that I don't have any work, but he's helped out the Reimers in the past. So he invited me if I wanted to help the Reimers out to put their trucks together, and it also helped me out because I helped Jacob out in the past with getting a job too and staying busy during the pandemic. So yeah, and me and Jacob just worked for Kelvin and Rosalie for 1 week in December. Then we took about a month break, and we got back in mid-April, and we were there until the last week of March. So we were there for 5 weeks, and the trucks were just bare frames. And me and Jacob pretty much put 95% of Rosalie Reimers Wildflower. We just had to do some stuff to the motor, but we didn't have the parts yet. So once they get that squared away, it's just a little bit of plumbing, and they can do all that themselves, no problem. But we put pretty much almost both their trucks together.
Man, you keep learning everywhere you go. Another great comment just came in from our friend Fernando Martinez. He says, I remember I was working on my second Anaheim show and looking across the pits and seeing Rudy with JR's team. I thought it was really awesome to see another Hispanic working on the trucks. Fast forward, I'm glad to call him a friend. And I guess that is a good point. Being, a Hispanic in the industry, maybe there's not too many of them. Does that mean anything to you to be representing that group of people?
Yeah, it does mean something to me, but it's another thing is I don't even acknowledge it. Like I feel like people don't even see me as Mexican or anything. Funny thing is I don't even speak Spanish, and I lived in my grandma for 5 years, or 4 years during my high school years, and she only speaks Spanish. So my Spanish is very caveman-like I want to eat, very simple words. But no, it is pretty cool that it's the Hispanic. Being Hispanic in the sport, something different.
Yeah, it's all about, standing out, and I think you made that very successful, especially the way you're very well spoken, the way you approach things, and you've had a lot of great opportunities in the industry, and of course, I would think is your biggest one. How did you get involved with Team Throttle Monster?
So, when I was with the Swansons, and let me go back to beginning of 2020. Was school was about to start for the spring, and that was when I decided in 2020 February, where I'm just going to stop doing the engineering classes, do mechanical work, because I was doing art classes, music classes, philosophy classes, and I wanted to tell the counselors I wanted to do more mechanical stuff, like an automotive class, a welding class, and they kept telling me that if I did that, it would jeopardize me transferring to certain universities because it looked like I wasn't taking the engineering classes serious, the engineering degree serious, because I'm kind of supposedly drifting away from what I'm supposed to do. So I decided to eventually just stick with my guts and realize that Mostrix was what I wanted to do my whole life. So it only made sense to just commit to it full time. And I know with the passion I have, good stuff will come out of it. So I did welding classes. So I did welding classes just 2 days a week, but I was able to be at the Swansons almost every day still, because the class is only 3 hours long, twice a week, 2 days next to each other. So I had a lot more time to do it, and I was going to get a welding degree, but then this whole pandemic started, and I had no school, and the Swansons didn't have any work. And eventually I had to find something, because I was actually negative in my bank account come May 2020. I was in the negatives. So I was super broke, and I needed to just kind of tell Rick that I needed to actually find a team that is able to afford a crew guy, because when I was with the Swansons, I was never a hired crew guy. I was there to help. We were just friends, honestly. I was just there when I can come. And that's all it was. They couldn't afford a crew guy. And we knew that it was just there to help me out with my own knowledge. And I was able to branch out at some point. So the time finally came, and I saw that Throttle Monsters was expanding really fast. and I decided maybe these guys are going to need the extra help. And because I actually knew Mike Christensen the year before, because in 2019, in the summer of 2019, I helped out the Groth twins for a whole summer driving their new ride truck. And Michael Christensen's daughter was helping me out, kind of collecting all the cash and keeping people in line. And I got to know Mike and Paul Jensen pretty well because we ate dinner in between the week too. So that's how I kind of knew Mike, because I figured if I asked him, I might get a higher chance at getting picked. And he picked me pretty much right away. And he asked if I knew anybody else that would like to work for us. And I suggested Jacob Ladwig, because I saw him work for the Reimers earlier in 2020. And to me, he was super humble and quiet. Like, he just kind of was proud that he kind of just worked without showing off. Like, he was just so to himself, and I kind of admired that. And he would kind of just, how do I say it? He was very mature for his age. He's only 24. So I knew that he was somebody that I can learn from, because I knew he worked with Sam Sturgis, and Sam Sturgis is one of the most knowledgeable guys in the industry. So I knew Jacob had a good education behind him. So I mentioned that to Mike, and when I flew out to Throttle Monsters, I didn't even know Jacob was hired yet. And he showed up the next day and just popped up and said, I heard you recommended me, and that surprised me. But yeah, so me and Jacob got hired to work at Throttle Monsters, and so did Michael Gromick and Michael Brister. And we just called them Brister and Michael Gromick Cheech. That's what we called them. Probably because there was already Mike Christensen on the team. But the rest of the guys were on the road. So it was me and Jacob Ladwig, and he had a friend Anthony come over who helped out with us on the truck too for a couple weeks. But it was just me and Jacob by ourselves putting this truck together. They had 3 trucks for us to choose from, because they got some trucks that were how do I say it? They got some trucks that weren't being ran at the time, and we were able to make 2 out of 3 work. So we kind of just stole parts off one, and we started with Hang Loose, the chassis of Hang Loose, and we took 3 weeks to put that together. And me and Jacob were a team, and we did 3 weeks on the road together, performing with Hang Loose. And then after that, they put me back at the shop to also revamp the Equalizer chassis that eventually ran as Wrecking Machine later on. And Mike Brister got to drive that one. And Jacob eventually started to have a few gigs with Rat Attack. So they needed somebody to fill in for Hang Loose now. And I actually wasn't supposed to drive, but no one else wanted to drive the truck because it was so old and it would just beat you up. So I was kind of thrown into it. I didn't even have my gear, so they would just give me anybody's fire suit to wear, and just got thrown into it and I was also the only one that would fit. Dawson was too tall, Brister was too tall, so I just got thrown into it and no other option. And that truck, it was my first ever monster truck I got to drive and compete in. So that meant a lot to me, and I made sure to always touch it up each week, and I even polished everything. Like, it didn't matter to me. It was my first monster truck. I can finally say like I'm getting somewhere, or it was just my next big step in monster trucks was to drive. And if you guys watch the YouTube channel Unstoppable Racer, I sent it pretty big on the first freestyle out, and that was not intentional. But that just comes with learning, throttle rhythm and all that. But that hurt. There is a photo the next day at another event of the truck in the air, and the shocks aren't even dropped out. So that explains why my back was hurting.
Yikes.
I mean, what an evolution. This is, your dream come true. You're in the event driving a truck. Although, listen, I love Hang Loose. Everyone knows me. It's such a love-hate. And it's kind of funny that the time that we are recording this, Rod Schmidt has actually re-debuted those 2 trucks, Equalizer Red Solo, under his new names, Thrillbilly and Redneck Rampage. So it's pretty interesting how everything comes full circle. But, you mentioned the crew you guys are working with. Michael Brister, Michael Gromick, very experienced guys working on monster trucks for many years, and Jacob Ladwig's been around it. And obviously you have Mike and Paul Jensen. It's very Dawson Reyes, Too Tall. So many name-dropping people here with a lot of experience. And I feel like you fit right in with a lot of the stuff that you knew. Or when you're working on those trucks, were you learning a lot, or was it just kind of work with what you have? I mean, there was a lot of love labor with those trucks, and you spent a lot of probably more time working on them than driving them. So did you really see your knowledge get taken to the test for this one?
Yeah. So when I was with Raising Cane, Rick and Eric Swanson, I never really fully got to do things on my own. It was always as a group. Eric was always there. So being with Throttle Monster, the biggest thing I got out of it was actually being really independent on my own, where I actually did everything from start to finish on my own. So if I were to put a transmission from start to finish, that was on my own. Putting just everything, the whole truck, we took it down. Like we never took apart the motors, but it was really just take apart everything, tidy up the wires and put everything back in. But everything was literally just all on you. No one was there to help you unless you asked, but you kind of just want to figure it out on your own first before you ask them. And yeah, I got to really learn a lot and hang loose. When Jacob left hang loose, when I was thrown into it, the shocks were bad and there was a lot of bugs in the truck. The truck broke almost every weekend. My first show out in Dodge City, Kansas, that's when I launched it. And then the next day we went to Garden City, 50 miles away. We had a show 50 miles away the next day. And for some reason, that truck just hurt me so bad. First round of racing, I jumped the ramp and the landing hurt so bad. I thought I wasn't tight enough. But I couldn't time myself anymore. So I knew, like, man, this is just going to hurt. But I won the round, so I had to race Brister. And I pointed at him to get a certain ramp because the ramp that I wanted him to get was a steeper one. I didn't want the steeper ramp. But he thought that I wanted that ramp instead of me telling him to go to that ramp. I just remember I hit that ramp, and that was the first time where it was like someone got, like, punched you in the stomach. So I drove back, and I was actually doing double duty. I was driving the robots, Galactron and Reptar. And so I did that, and that was the one time where I was just nervous, thinking the whole time, like, I just wanted this to drag because I was just afraid to get back in the truck, honestly. And freestyle happened, and I hit the first jump, painful. Then I whipped it into a donut, and I lost all my front steering. And to me, that was a good thing because I did not want to freestyle. There's only 2 ramps out there, and they were both the same. It was 45-degree angle, both sides. So glad that ended. But the next weekend, we were in Lubbock, Texas, and Craig Christensen saw how badly the truck was reacting. He helped me rebuild the shocks, and it instilled in me how to rebuild the shocks because I've done them before with Rick a couple of times, but doing it with Craig, it was the real, like, finalizer where, okay, I know how this goes, and I can start doing shocks on my own now. That's another plus I got out of driving, was just kind of making sure you did know what you learned. And so that was Dodge City and Kansas City all in the same weekend. Then the next weekend we were in Lubbock, and that's where he did the shocks for me, or helped me with it. And that first jump I hit in wheelies, I broke my front drive shaft. And I was changing pinion angles because I was trying to get more extension on the shocks, and the pinion angle was preventing the shocks from dropping out. So I changed the pinion angles, and I was able to lengthen the straps out finally, but come to find out the pinion angle wasn't right, and the drive shaft did not like that. So my first hit in wheelies in Lubbock, I felt rattling, and I knew it was a drive shaft. So I pulled out to the pits, and my instinct was to take everything off and do the whole show with rear wheel drive. And I remember Craig Christensen coming over, and he's like, "You're going to run without it?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean, I don't have enough time." And he kind of found it impressive that I was able to think of that. And I kind of impressed myself too. And Craig was like a really good mentor for me because he said, "All right, you got to hit this obstacle with a lot of throttle, this and that." And I pretty much did everything Craig did, just with half as much throttle because that was such an old truck. But it was kind of a good thing getting such an old truck, because it limited me on what I can do, and it really grounded me, because if I had a good truck, I probably just would have been launching it right away, honestly. but that taught me to get through a show and know what the truck's capable of. And I remember each jump I would do, because we only had enough time to do the front shocks. The back shocks, I wasn't allowed to mess with yet. So I had to deal with only good front shocks. So if you pay attention, after Lubbock, every jump, I made sure I landed on the obstacle still. I never cleared the ramp. So I was very limited to what I can do, but it also just taught me to make sure I get through a show, and I had a lot more fun getting through a show than worrying about a truck being broken. So that was a good lesson to start out with good Moss truck to start out in.
And Buddha's in the comments, good old Buddha, and he says, what's the funniest thing that's happened while on tour? I don't know.
The funniest thing with you, Buddha?
Oh, turn it around on him. Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
Or there's a lot. It's kind of hard to pinpoint.
Well, let's hear both sides.
Since it's Buddha, gosh, what is a funny one? There's just a lot. Buddha is honestly the funniest guy I've ever met. And every time he's around, we just know we're going to have good laughs. And we got excited every time Buddha was coming over. I don't know. Jill Swanson made us breakfast one time. I don't want to tell stories because I don't know what stories I should tell. This is a family show, I'm sure.
Well, you dug yourself a hole.
But no, so Jill Swanson, if you're watching this, hi Jill. She made us breakfast, and it was cereal this one day, and she served us chocolate milk with the cereal for some reason, but there wasn't any milk in the cereal, so we would grab the chocolate milk and just poured it into a cereal, and Jill came back with a jug of milk and like, what are you doing? He's like, I thought you gave me chocolate milk to pour in my cereal. So that's a clean one.
Yeah, you're scaring Buddha in the comments.
I'll think of something. Buddha.
You're scaring him.
I'll give a shout out to Buddha. Buddha, tell Douglas I said hi. Get the word with him now.
How about let's just say I don't want to go to a water park with you, Buddha.
Oh,
dear.
boy.
Oh, boy. I'll save that for when Rick's back.
All right,
here.
What's next, Phil?
I'll give a shout out to one of our past guests, Tanner Roots, in the comments as well. A past triple threat athlete. So good to see Tanner in the comments here. Yeah, so I know you're just telling the length a lot how Craig Christensen was helping you out, and I know him and one of our past guests, Corey Clark. Such veteran experience. I was on the road with you, and you're doing these events back to back. I mean, Craig Christensen, he's driven all the big name trucks, and there you are, Rudy. You're racing against him. What's that thought process? All of a sudden, like, I'm a fan from the stands. Now I'm racing against future Hall of Famers and people that I probably saw drive when I was younger.
See, and that's what's super cool is for me, I've never honestly geeked out. Like, I've able to contain myself and just brush it off. But meeting Craig Christensen, I did grow up watching him from MOD, and same goes for Rick Swanson. And I never gave off a geeky like freak out moment to them, like I'm working with them. But it was just more of an inner humbling feeling, just knowing that I'm there and seeing me work before saying I'm a fan or something. Just let them see me as a worker first, and I gained their respect. But Craig Christensen, he was super cool. Like, he was a coach to me for my first few shows, and if I had issues with the truck, he would be the guy to give me advice on how he would do it. And I think, and Craig Christensen and I are really good friends, actually. So that's another cool thing is you become friends with the guys you grew up watching. And I think I impressed them, and I impressed myself too, like I said, because instinct just kicks in when it's you driving it, and it's your responsibility to get it to the show. So when hang loose would break, I just kind of would like I said, throw out the front drive shaft or maybe take off something that I can just get through the show. And one time we were in Salina, Kansas in early October or mid-October, and it was 30 degrees. That was the highest, and the lowest would have been 26, I think. So we had an afternoon and a night show, and I blew my transmission again. I blew my transmission on my first ever weekend in Vernal. The bell housing literally split itself, the bolts backed it out of each other. So I kind of replaced the seal on it and put it back together, and it made it through all the way until Salina, Kansas, which is my 3rd week in driving. And I had to change the transmission in 30-degree weather, and my hands were so numb. I remember I got a heater, and that heater died at some point, and my hands were so frozen I couldn't even tell if I had the torque converter bolts in or not. But we were able to get back in the show and make it in time just to do a freestyle. And that was when the shocks were still hurting me. So I still never released that freestyle footage because I didn't have time because of the tranny. But the shocks are hurting me so bad. Like literally, I did 5 jumps, crawled over everything, and called it done. But it did show Craig that I knew I was a good worker, I guess. And I met Craig in the Hot Wheels deal, and we caught up with each other, told him what my future plans are. And once everything gets back up and going, he says if I ever need anything, to give him a call, and I'll have probably a little bit of work with him if I needed it.
Man, sounds like you got a lot of rain checks you're going to collect on here once things get rolling. And, looking at the record books, you are the last official driver of Hang Loose, unless somebody resurrects that body. And now you've moved to yet another team. Now you're with Wjs Motorsports. Past guest Jacob Ladwig and Sam Sturgis there for you. What's I know you're just kicking off your next step here. What's the biggest thing you've learned from Sam Sturgis, a true legend from the industry?
Well, I personally worked with Sam for only 2 weeks. Other than that, he's just seen me from working with the Swansons or first quarter when he was helping out the Reimers. But I did realize he can pretty much work on anything. There's nothing he can't figure out. And when I'm meeting people that I've met in the past or new people, when I tell them I'm working for Sam Sturgis, automatically they're just so happy for me. They say Sam knows everything, and they tell me stories on how Sam's helped me out. So I honestly don't really know Sam too well yet, but I can't wait to get to know him more once we get shows back up. But I just know that he's a guy that's going to help me a lot the most. And for what I want to do in the future, he's a really good guy that I got to stick with for a little bit and to really understand the science. For example, I don't even know motors much yet. The best I can do is probably time it and check valves. So he's going to be a guy that's going to really ground me in that part of the truck. So that's what I can't wait to learn from Sam, is understanding more on the motors and just everything, honestly. I want to be like him, where I can figure out how to get something to work no matter what.
Phil, we got any fan questions?
Well, questions, comments. I know I see one from Levi again. He says, Rudy, when is our Taco Bell date?
Oh, Lord, Levi.
Taco Bell date? Yeah, because Levi lives 10 minutes away from me. So I messaged him yesterday or day before if he wants to go out for a bite to eat. So maybe sometime next week, because the weekends I babysit my nephew.
Oh, that's pretty scary, Levi. Another one just came in from Lee Plato from the Skull Crusher. Says, Rudy was a huge help to me getting the new full-size Skull Crusher back in the trailer after its first event. So another solid work by Rudy.
Nice to see you, Lee.
Then I caught another comment from earlier in the evening. It's up in the feed now from my friend Tommy. I know you talked about, Dennis Anderson you grew up a lot with and, you looked up to. But who are some other, retired drivers that ran Monster Jam that, you took a lot of liking to and inspired to be?
Charlie Pauken. I was a huge fan of Mark McDonald, because to me, I was mature enough to understand that you can work on a truck. So Mark McDonald, I knew worked on the trucks. Tony Farrell, I really liked his vibe. Dustin Brown was the guy I admired the most, probably besides Dennis, honestly, when it came to monster trucks. But like I said, Rick Swanson was the guy that I grew up watching my whole life, because he was always at Anaheim and I'm always there. And my mom would literally kind of see him at displays. And as a kid, I wish I can find photos. Apparently, my mom says that he would be the truck displaying his truck around Orange County. So, those are the guys that I looked up to and eventually got to meet pretty much. Rick Swanson, like I said, it was the biggest and most humbling person I've got to know in this industry.
So I got to ask, what is your favorite memory in the industry thus far?
Favorite? Can't really pinpoint one, but one of the coolest things I want to say is, like I said, I don't geek out when I come to meeting people I've known, but even though I didn't do the engineering, I still design a lot of stuff that I want to do for monster trucks. And I have this invention that I'm still trying to work. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm still in the works. But once this whole pandemic ends, I want to get going on it again. But I wanted to present it. The couple of projects I have, I can't just run it on any team. It costs money, to build it. And then I got to make sure whoever's going to use my stuff drives hard. So the first people I talked to industry-wise was in person, Dennis Anderson. We were at Digger's Dungeon in 2019. Dennis invited us out to his shop to work on the trucks during the middle of the week, during triple threat stuff. And I ran into Dennis and I wanted to talk to him about a couple of designs I have and just to get his opinion before I move up and ask anybody else. And Dennis said, I'll talk to you in a minute. And he had some stuff he had to do. And I remember he looked through the window and saw me still waiting outside the door. He probably thought I was a super fan, like waiting to ask for his autograph. But he let me in finally. And he's like, so how's it going? Are you a big fan? And I was like, yeah, I'm a big fan, but I want to talk to you about a few ideas. And he was really intrigued. And he's like, come inside. And I got to walk into his shop before when they were like probably a couple weeks before they were going to debut King Skling. I remember the body was still white. But that was my idol. That was the guy I looked up to the most. And he's probably the reason why I love Monstrix, honestly, because he's the guy that made it look like it was fun and it was all about having a good time, making sure people were happy. So he was the guy I watched the most and looked up to the most. He was my first idol and probably still my biggest. So when I got to meet him, I never actually said like, I wanted to say it, but I knew he probably gets it millions of times. But I wanted to say how much of a big fan I am and how much he meant to me, but I didn't. I was showing him my sketchbook full of multiple stuff I got going on. And as I'm turning the pages on my book, I'm literally shaking each page. And Dennis just looks at me and starts smiling, and he knows, he kind of knew from there how much he meant to me. And we talked for literally 40 minutes until literally Jack, Nick, and Kristen had to tell me we had to go because we had to go to a show. But that was honestly one of the most humbling experiences. And the next time I see Dennis, maybe I could geek out finally and say, if you remember me. But after that, I got to meet the Andersons individually and tell them more. And in the future, I hope to get going on a few projects. And they're the guys that are going to help me out once everything gets back to normal eventually.
So, you have a really inspiring story in how you got involved with the industry. And I got to ask, what advice you have for someone wanting to get their foot in the door in the industry?
It's gonna be hard. Like I got people that actually message me, and when they ask these certain questions, I give them my number right away because I'd rather call them because messaging takes too long, and I feel like you can impact them better through a phone call. And I let them know all the mistakes I've done, all the things I didn't know that was really embarrassing, but you got to get through it. And you can't get beat up every time you embarrass yourself or when someone tells you something that wasn't, too nice. You don't take it personal because, then you're just hurting yourself. But as far as advice, like as much as I've been in the industry, I still get no's half the time, Like to this day, it's hard for me to find a good gig as it is. But once you get started with your foot in the door, like once you help out for the first time, best you can do is just literally do anything. Even if it's just sweeping the trailer or wipe down the truck, make sure you ask questions. And when you give off that, they know you have good intentions and you're someone that they are curious to work around. They probably want you around more. But if you have the vibe where you're taking photos all the time and you say you want to be a driver right away, it kind of just messes you up right away as a first impression. But honestly, you just got to ask, and eventually someone's going to say yes.
I love it. A couple more fan comments came in. Your mom asked, Rudy, what was your favorite World Finals?
My favorite? That would have to be, I would say 2006, because we went to 2002. And then we skipped all of them until 2006, and we went every year from there. So 2002 was the first year we went, and I was able to acknowledge where it was at. And Dennis pretty much was the whole show. He won racing, and then he got second place in freestyle. But we all thought, he's gonna win. There's no way. What are the odds of the last person winning? But that was my most memorable World Finals was that year, because it was pretty much, to me, like actually understanding where I was, and to me that was my first World Finals where I knew what was going on. So that was mine.
Got some great comments lined up from Mr. Buddha Keller. One of them says, "How was Phil at my wedding, but you weren't?"
Hey, we tried Buddha. Me and Jacob Ladwig really wanted to go to Buddha's wedding, and it was, we're also very broke, and we just got started on Throttle Monsters. And the week prior to Buddha's wedding, a show got canceled because we all went through this huge windstorm, and it destroyed the whole city. It was a tornado that never really fully formed, and it was just a big gust of wind that took out everything in the town, all the power, and we got that show canceled. And it was a 50-50 if the show next weekend would be canceled. Unfortunately, it wasn't, but if it was going to be canceled, we were going to go, Buddha. So I do regret it. I'll be honest. I do regret it because that show was not fun. It was very muddy.
That's okay. We got some real questions from Buddha. Who's someone you're hoping to line up against in the near future?
The near future? I remember Dennis, he was supposed to keep going. So I figured if I can be a driver by then, maybe the chance would be high to compete against him just once. But that didn't happen. So, but that was always a cool hoping. But realistically, I think from as far as who I've worked with, for some reason I can't wait to race the Groff twins. Like, those guys are just super fun. They took me out. They got me to have my first steak. They were just the funnest group of guys I've ever had with, honestly, because we ate out all the time. Like, it was just nothing but fun. And even though the trucks had their bugs and the ride truck did, there was never a lot of stress. Like, we just kind of did it right away, and they would take the time to teach me new things, and it was fun. So whenever I see them, I just know I'm going to have a good time, and we just love laughing and hanging around, and I can't wait to one day race them, because they're just seeing someone that used to help them now against them. I think that's cool to them too. And I don't know, that's who I think I look forward to racing the most would be Tyler and Travis Groff.
Another one from Buddha. What is your strength and weaknesses knowledge-wise on the truck?
The motors. Just the motors. I like I said, I can just check valves and maybe do timing. But other than that, I've gone through pretty much everything. And this whole last year, my knowledge has pretty much tripled, I think. So I know what I can do and fully understand on my own now. And that's why I want to start doing more videos on my YouTube channel on how stuff works too.
Question came in from Sam Hollander. I'm going to take a spin on this. He says, Rudy, what was your favorite show to crew at? I'll take a different approach. You've been a lot of places. What has been your favorite place that you've visited?
For me, it's still Anaheim, because it gives me chills because I was always there as a fan. But as far as anywhere else, triple threats, they're all pretty much the same building wise. So when I was with the Swansons, since I was doing school, I would only do local shows. So I was pretty much there at the shop, not at the shows, honestly. But I'd still learn just as much because the trucks need to be looked through. So I still got to learn. But when I got to do Monster Jam in 2020, since I was taking a welding class at the time, I was able to go to more shows and be back in time too. So I went to Houston last year in 2020, and that place was so big. I didn't realize how big it was, but just being in there gave me chills. So that's the only stadium other than San Diego and Anaheim and Oakland, because those are all baseball stadiums, but being inside a big dome stadium was pretty cool. And so far, the coolest stadium, I guess, I've been to.
All right, Rudy, this is usually the part of the show where I ask everybody, when it's all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be? But I still think that you're still getting started here. You're still an up-and-comer. You still got to hit that rising star moment. And you are a monster truck driver. That can never be taken away. But what does the next 5 years look like for Rudy?
Well, the next 5 years, now that I'm able to start, when I do my gigs, I know I can start getting paid now, and I'm confident that I can throw out some offers, but I do want to start saving up and get something going. And I just kind of want to learn and just keep understanding these trucks. And now that I'm with Sam, I'm going to learn what it's like to do everything on my own. I'm going to start learning how to drive rigs. So doing all that. But also another thing I want to make sure I do in this sport is to also help others and impact others. Because people say people's goals, when I ask some people's goals, they say they want to be a world champion or a driver. And to me, that's kind of a little, to me, I want it to be more, because I think you can win all the championships you want, but it doesn't matter if you're not a guy that impacts people. So I want to be someone that can help others also get into the sport. And those YouTube videos will help. And if I can invite some people out to the shows where I'm doing with Sam, I already got a few people I have in mind that I want to bring over one day, just so they can say they helped out. But while they're helping out, I want to kind of teach them what is what. And eventually I just want to be a person that teaches people these trucks. And if they want to do their own stuff one day, they have my advice.
I love it, Rudy. There's another question came in from Michael Keller. He says, can I have your number? Now, I'll take a spin on that. I don't want you giving out your phone number, but where can people find you on social media and stay up to date with what you have going on?
You can follow me on my Instagram. It's RudyMDC_13. And my YouTube channel is Unstoppable Racer. So those are the only two social medias that I use to kind of share what I do. My Facebook's pretty much just like family related stuff.
Well, the fans will find you there, Rudy. Thank you. Nice save, Phil. Rudy, thank you so much for being on board. Vincent, what do you say here?
Good old Buddha. What is this guy doing? Clark or Petty's? He just did a video on Clark's, Buddha. Come on.
Well, we're
just so proud of Buddha being in comments.
I'm disappointed.
He's my biggest fan.
Yeah, if you want. Yeah, well, listen, Rudy, I'm going to send you home now. Thank you so much for being on the show. You're very well spoken. You have a great attitude, a great mindset, and the future is so bright. No one can take it away. You're unstoppable. You're a racer, and most importantly, I think you are officially a monster truck driver, and we can't wait to see where you're going to go from here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me out.
You really are
Rudy.
The pun king, aren't you?
Yeah. I said he's unstoppable racer. I know we didn't get to flash it before, but is the picture up? There you go. Yeah, there's Rudy in his unstoppable racer. So that's where it starts, folks. And then, you heard Rudy's whole story thus far, and it's very much exactly, again, like I said, we came in here. We always ask people what kind of advice you have and how do you want to get involved in the industry. Rudy's the perfect example of taking that advice, and he's taking it to the next level. He's worked with top teams in business. He has driven monster truck, and future's bright. I'm very, very excited we got to feature him here on the podcast. Still very much at the ground level in his career. And, I said that 5-year plan. I'd really like to look back at this episode 5 years from now and see what Rudy's up to now than he wasn't doing now.
I mean, you never know where Rudy's going to be, but all I know is the future's bright for Rudy.
So, yeah, that concludes our program here tonight. If you enjoyed this episode, once again, make sure you like this video and you share this video. I know Rudy's going to share this video when we're all said and done, so anybody that wants to come back and watch Rudy's story whenever they can. I know a lot of people running around, so maybe they didn't get to watch live. Make sure you share that video and you like it. That helps us grow, and it helps everybody get to hear Rudy's story. Buddha just wants us to leave. Buddha, we got to go, brother. But again, a lot of people we mentioned here tonight that has helped out Rudy in his career, Christensen's and the Swansons and the Sturgis camp, they've all been on our podcast before. So if you want to hear their episodes, make sure you go to our video tab on our Facebook page or live tab, live podcast episodes. You can see our entire live. So make sure you check that out there. And also wherever you are on the go, at the gym, on the plane, in the train, the automobiles, wherever you can download podcasts, that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora. Radio.com is no longer radio.com anymore. It's now Audacity, Stitcher, you name it. wherever you can find the podcast, you can download our podcast. So you can find Rudy's episode audio only, as well as all of our other episodes. So make sure you check them out there. And again, if you like tonight's episode, make sure you like our Facebook page and you follow us on Instagram. And just stay tuned. We're always trying to figure something out around here. And hopefully we'll be back here next week with another episode. I say hopefully, but,
Speaking about that,
yeah.
if you want to be on the show, send us a message. But, we're not slowing down. And, we got a lot of big things coming in the month of May. Phil, what could that be? We got some shows coming up. Or a show.
Yeah, there's some events coming up around. Yeah, well, unfortunately, we lost an event in Tucson, Arizona. Again, time we're recording this, or events are still coming and going. But we up at Lake Havasu City, Arizona, second weekend of May with Monster Truck Insanity Tour. So we'll have some stuff going on over there. And also Monster Jam just announced they'll be in Glendale, Arizona. So I'm sure we'll be floating out around there, figuring something out. Slowly opening here. Thank you, Tom, for tuning in. I see your comments here. You got Rudy on the right path, and tonight's episodes prove it. Buddha, you've already been on the show. You can't apply to be on the show. You've actually been on it more times than some other people. So again, tell Douglas and the crew I said hi. I love him. I miss him.
Buddha's had his own episode of this point.
Listen, we've had a lot of fun here tonight. Got really nothing else to say. What do you say, Vincent? Want to wrap it up? Well, we already wrapped it up. You want to just end it?
Oh, well, let this speak for itself.